Yesterday, I made a video talking about some really devastating data that has come out about the state of America's honeybees. Specifically, our commercial beekeepers, migratory beekeepers that pollinate most of the food that we eat. They are reporting 62% colony loss. That's a record. The financial losses for America's beekeepers are unbelievable. It's in the billions of dollars, not only from the loss of the colonies themselves, but from the fees for pollinating farmers' fields. That's where the real money is, and obviously from the honey itself too. It's not just a huge financial hit for migratory beekeepers, it is a huge issue for everybody who eats fruits and vegetables. I cannot overemphasize what a crisis this is. Now, the majority of people who watch my content have only been watching since the 2024 election, so you might not know that I used to talk a lot more about actual permaculture design. I have an urban orchard, and I have been a beekeeper for many years. I have 2 beehives. Those bees are there both to pollinate my orchard and to provide sustainable sweetener in the form of honey for my family. I practice sustainable backyard beekeeping. I'm very critical of migratory beekeeping practices. I don't feed my bees. I don't treat my bees with pesticides, fungicides, miticides. I don't purchase bees. All of my bees are always swarms that I catch around Portland. Those are swarms that would otherwise end up in the walls of somebody's house or in a business or in a tree where they are likely to be exterminated. So I give them a home. Both of my hives are what are called top bar hives, and they don't look like the traditional Langstroth hive that you would see a commercial beekeeper use. A traditional box of frames in a Langstroth hive can weigh 60 pounds when it's full of honey. It's not very easy for kids to learn and practice that kind of beekeeping. And my eldest daughter really wanted to be a beekeeper with me, and so I really wanted to do a method of beekeeping that's much more child-friendly because she was a kid at the time. She's an adult now. So this is a bar or a frame for my cathedral hive. A regular top bar hive has just one horizontal bar, and a cathedral hive has these 3 bars glued together so that the bees basically build a hexagon of comb. It's much more stable for the bees to build off of 3 sides instead of 1, and you end up with less breakage of the comb. You can see here that people can handle 1 individual frame at a time instead of a heavy super full of honey. A top bar built out with comb and honey or a comb and brood weighs about 7 pounds, again, versus a honey super from a Langstroth hive, the commercial style beekeeping hive, which weighs 60 pounds. So again, much more family friendly. Here's a picture of a top bar frame. You can see the bees are in the process of filling it out with honey. This is all honey here. This is all old comb. The bees will reuse the beeswax. So a few seasons ago, maybe there was brood in here, maybe there was bee bread, which is fermented pollen, but now they are filling it in with honey. Get this really beautiful, dark, rich color when there's older comb. It turns like a dark chocolatey color. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of beekeeping in this video. I know that vegan activists have been going after beekeeping for a number of years, and folks like to mischaracterize European honeybees as invasive in the United States. They are an introduced, naturalized species. They're not invasive, but they are also not native here. And they do compete with native bees, but they are naturalized. Again, all of the bees that I have are wild caught. They are everywhere in America. They're in the walls of your house. They're in your barn. They're in your shed. They're in old snag trees. And so I don't participate in breeding bees. I don't buy boxes of bees, and I'm not criticizing people who do. But my own personal choice is to rescue a colony, a swarm that would otherwise likely end up being exterminated, and let them have a home in my garden, have access to my fruit trees and other plants in my garden, and a good source of water as well. And we could get into a discussion or a debate about honeybees and what their environmental impact is here in the US because they are not native. But I think that conversation would be incomplete without discussing the environmental impact of other sweeteners. So the minimal impact of backyard beekeepers choosing to use honey as a sweetener. What is that environmental cost and benefit versus the production of GMO sugar beets or sugarcane and that environmental impact? You need a whole complete picture, right? In permaculture, we are designing from patterns to details. We don't want to leave out any of the greater patterns, and we don't want to leave out any of those important details that help us analyze where it is that we can not only reduce harm, but where we can push toward abundance. Industrial migratory beekeeping is a very different practice from what I do in my backyard. It's like comparing, having a backyard flock of chickens and ducks like I do to a battery farming industrial chicken and egg production. They're entirely different beasts, right? That is very much like backyard beekeeping versus commercial migratory beekeeping. It is an industrial practice, and there's plenty of valid criticisms, and I have freely made them over the years. Okay, but anyway, I want to get to this question. I'm terrified of bees. My body has a full panic response to one being anywhere near me. Any advice on how to be less terrified of them? I love the little dudes, but my body doesn't. First off, you mean dudettes, not dudes, because those bees that you see, those worker bees, are all female, at least when it comes to honeybees out and about. Okay, so this is my favorite thing to tell people about beekeeping. The reason that I became a beekeeper is not because they were some necessary part of my permaculture design. They're not because I wanted honey for our family. They're not because I wanted to improve pollination in my garden. I got bees because I was an active gardener, and so my garden was full of bees, both European honeybees and many species of native bees, and I was terrified of bees. It is very difficult to be a gardener when you are wanting to produce lots of fruits and veggies when your garden is full of flowers, and to be really scared of bees. So I got into beekeeping. I took a class from a friend of mine who owned a beekeeping store in Portland, and I was like, I am going to get bees as a form of exposure therapy. I was so scared of bees that I thought the only way I can get over this is that I need to invite 30,000 of them, 40,000 of them to come live in my backyard. And so that's how that went. I cured my fear of bees by becoming a beekeeper. And I'm not saying that to be glib, that's really true. I learned about bee communication, bee behavior. I learned that a lot of the things I was afraid of when interacting with bees in my garden really boiled down to me not understanding honeybee behavior and not understanding the fact that these ladies they really just want to come and load up on nectar and pollen and go back to the colony, right? Worker honeybees, when they are away from the colony, they don't have a big source of honey to defend. They don't have brood to defend. And so bees out and about in your garden, they're not out to get you. They just want to get their job done. They just want to fill up on food and get back to the colony. By becoming a beekeeper, I not only desensitized myself very rapidly, but I learned to understand how bees communicate and the things that tick them off and the things that help them stay really chill. For example, bees really, really do not like to be rolled. So if a bee lands on you, this action is likely to get you stung. This action is less likely to get you stung. If a bee feels like she's being squished, and when you roll her, she really feels like she's being squished, she's like, I'm going out. I might as well go out defending all my sisters, right? Because when a honeybee stings you, she then dies. So if she feels that she's about to meet her maker, then she'll likely sting you to defend other bees in the colony that are around. But like this, that's fine. And when I get stung, I swell up pretty big. So I always wear a veil, I always wear a jacket, and I always wear gloves when I'm in the colony. I cannot afford to have my hands swell up really big, so I always have my gloves on. A few times I have been lazy and not put on, I usually wear really heavy denim overalls. And a few times I've been lazy and wore leggings. So bees don't really like the color black. I think there is some speculation that evolutionarily that to them says black bear. Yeah, so I learned very quickly not to wear black leggings when I am checking on my colony. I ended up getting stung 12 or 15 times in the leg. I make sure I have a prescription for an EpiPen. I have one for me and one for my daughter. Neither of us are allergic to bees, but you can develop an allergy at any time. So a responsible beekeeper keeps an EpiPen on hand. So this is a look at my cathedral hive on a normal day. I can be out about in the garden quite close to them, and I'm never worried. I know that bees prefer if I talk quietly near the colony. If I try not to exhale carbon dioxide directly into it, they don't like that. This is a swarm we caught, and I'm transferring it into a hive. Swarms are how honeybees reproduce, right? A new queen, or maybe the old queen, and a chunk of workers, they split off from the colony, they leave, and they go form a new colony. That is how bees multiply in nature. Swarming is a really good thing, but those bees will take off and they will often land on a branch or sometimes in a big ball on the ground, or you might see a cloud of bees in the sky. We're looking for a new home, and beekeepers such as myself would love to come and take them and put them in our hives. I've had friends who are afraid of bees come over and look inside my colony and get a chance to get some exposure therapy themselves. I really feel like learning about bee behavior and having positive interactions with bees help even the most afraid person overcome their fear of bees.